Welcome, welcome, welcome to this week's community conversation with your host, Miss J. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are already ending November. When I say 2024 is blowing by, what are you doing to take advantage of all the great conversations that we're having? As always, we want to welcome you to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And here on Community Conversation, we talk about the things that matter. Why? Because we're intent and intending to change lives by having the right conversations. Each week, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Without you, there is no conversation. Your presence continues to shed light on things that we need to discuss and things that need to be changed. Now, why is this important? Because as always, it plays a vital role in the day-to-day lives that we live and what we're trying to leave for our legacies. Our goal is always to achieve for ourselves, our family, our legacy, greatness, excellence, drip, and flight. As always, you're welcome to join the conversation with questions, thoughts, or comments. Just post in the chat box. And if you're listening, you can also email infolovebay@gmail.com or give us a call. You can see the number on the website or below on the screen. Now, today we're doing a topic that we actually have done, but we got so much great response that we decided to do a part two. We know that continuity for change is vital, and we are continuing the conversation with a returning guest, Mr. Keith Merith, a retired police superintendent with a 31 tenure in law enforcement. He served on several command positions, including Bureau Commander of Information Services and Court Services, an officer in charge of investigative services, and the organized crime bureau. Welcome, Keith, to the show. How are you?
Oh, good evening, Jay. I'm good, thank you. Thank you.
Good stuff. To all our listeners, please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Merith. Thank you for giving us some more of your time. There was so much interest in the last show that we just had to bring you back for part two because
Yeah,
that means that there's conversations still to be
yes,
had. People want to know. Now, for
yes.
those who also don't know, Keith is an established author of the award-winning national best-selling book, A Darker Shade of Blue, A Police Officer's Memoir. So we're doing part two
Part two.
of A Darker Shade of
Yeah,
Blue. Just as a quick recap, when we spoke last, we spoke about things that were happening in the force, how you got into the force, what was your journey, your story, the vision that you had to elevate, Black people within law enforcement and to share some really good gems in terms of the challenges you faced. This time around, I think we want to delve a little bit more into some of the juicy topics we didn't get a chance to cover in the last session. I know we got into some real deep talk and the hour flew by. So let's dig in today. Why don't you tell the people how you're doing, if there's anything else you want them to know before we jump right in?
oh no, I'm doing very well. It's been a busy last few months for me with the book carrying the swing. A lot of people are reading it. There's a lot of interest in the book, and also because of the book, there's demands on my time to speak to groups and hold sessions and so on and so forth. So it's been busy and very, very good. So I have no complaints. It's all good.
I mean, hey,
Yeah.
like they say, people who have complaints, the people that are the people who don't want to hear them or are okay that it's happening to you. So I'm glad you have no complaints.
All
You mean
good.
you had a very rich career, and with that rich career, it brings the blessings of being able to share, right? We speak about legacy, and not many people after they retire tend to take that on, right? They just want to travel the world, kick up, but you are continuing to blaze the trail for those coming after you in law enforcement. And maybe we can start right there in terms of the challenges, like even getting hired into the police agency. What words of wisdom or game plans can you share with those who are trying to get into law enforcement?
Well, my experience was way, way back when things were not nice and it was very, very challenging to get in. We have made significant leaps and bounds in terms of our recruiting. When I say our, I'm talking about policing primarily in Ontario, where it's more fair and balanced in terms of the recruiting and getting diverse members on the police service. So my words of encouragement basically is if you have an interest in law enforcement, then pursue it. And
Mhm.
we certainly understand that there are some challenges, but the hill is not as steep as it was. And if you are determined and you put in the work and the effort, there's no reason why you shouldn't be part of the system. And when I say that, I say it with an enlightenment that if you are part of the system, then you are able to create changes, positive changes from within. So I'm encouraging brothers and sisters to join law enforcement agencies or law enforcement groups and keep the work flowing. I can't do it all by myself, and the old dogs like me, we're burning it. So we need some fresh blood in there.
I hear you on that. I mean, you can't change a system unless you're within it, right? Because sometimes when you look at a system from the external, it gives you this, like, it's easy to pick at things, right? Oh, well, look, they should do this and they should do that and they should do this. But when you get into it, you really see a different perspective, right? When you get into the nuts and bolts of the system. And so, I hear the words of encouragement there to get in, just get in first and then look at making change. And it's true, as you did throughout the years. And what maybe letting some of the audience know, what were some of those key highlighted change? I mean, you held a lot of different positions, and change to me doesn't always have to be massive. Sometimes it's moving the needle just a little at a time to get it to the next level. So maybe you can share some of those, like what were maybe some of the things you remember as being pivotal?
Yeah. So I can even start with the recruiting process. And I'll give you an example of my experience with recruiting into a police service and the future of policing in terms of recruiting. So when I started back in the 80s, there were very few diverse candidates coming through the door. And the police department was a different entity, meaning that it was primarily run by male whites. And at that time, they really had no interest in having people like myself be part of their establishment, what they classified as their department, their service. So I had just a real nasty experience in joining. And I'll give you one example of what happened to me. It was 1980. And I had finished college. I got a diploma in law and security administration. I had volunteered for a number of different agencies. I even went on a ride along with a number of police services back in the day. All of this was to prepare myself for the eventuality of getting onto the job. I signed up with the Peel Regional Police back in 1980, as I mentioned. I put in my resume and submitted my application. And I went through a series of tests, which I passed. And I got to the stage where I was now sanctioned to go in front of senior officers as the selection board committee, as they call themselves. So, I was ready. I even went out and bought myself a badass pinstripe suit. And it was a three-piece suit.
Walking with your pimp walk.
It was the 80s, right? So there was a little flair going on.
You should have had a bow chicka wow wow in the back plate.
Listen, man, I finished it off with a crisp white shirt and a dark tie. And I had a little bit of platform on the shoes, because it was the 80s. And
did you have goldfish in the shoe? That's the real question.
No goldfish. No goldfish.
Were there goldfish in the shoe heels?
In the shoe heels. I'll pat down that real tight.
You just needed a fedora.
I didn't go that far because of the conservative nature of the police department at the time.
Yeah.
But I spent a little bit of money, and I was looking the part. So on the day I got there early, and I was moved to sort of a room outside of the main conference room. And I sat there for a little bit, and then a sergeant approached me and said, "Okay, they're ready for you now." We get up and we walk to the conference doors, and he opens the doors and I walk in. And when I approached the door, I heard talking in the room, When the door opened, there was silence, nothing. I walk in the room and there's four senior white officers sitting side by side at a table. They said nothing to me. The sergeant walked me in, and there was a seat in front of these four officers.
Mhm.
And he sat me down. And the officers just looked at me. They stared at me. Obviously, nobody told them I was black. It was obvious.
Mhm.
And
Clearly.
it was bad. So one of the gentlemen, staring me down, and he says to me, "Why are you here?" Okay. So I start the practice spiel that I had. I talked about wanting to be a police officer my whole life. I wanted to be part of the service community to help, bring law enforcement to the public in a professional manner, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
He cut me off midstream and said to me, "No, why are you here?" I said, "Oh, okay, maybe I missed it." And
Maybe
so I
in the wrong room. Like, is this my interview?
yeah, I said, okay. I said, you know what? I know Peel Regional Police is a premier police service. They're professional, and I know that they are at the front of policing. This is where I want to be. That kind of stuff. Boom! He cuts me off again. Third time, he says to me, and he wasn't mincing any words. He said, "No, I asked you, why are you here in front of us?" And I said, "Oh, damn. Okay. I know where he's going with this. I know
That's
where
it.
he's going with this." And at that point in time, I was kind of lost. I was thinking, okay, what do I say after this? I said, well, sir, I prepared for this interview. It's blah, blah, blah. He cut me off and said, "Okay, you can leave." Just like that. So think about this. I was in that interview for all of 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Wow.
He asked me three questions, and they were all the same. "Why are you in front of me?" And then he dismissed me. I walk out, I sit down, the sergeant comes out after me, and he says to me, "Well, Keith, you have not been selected." I said, "Okay. I understand that if you have made it this far in the system, that you have a year to prepare, and then you can come back again for another interview." I looked it all up. I knew what it was about. He
Right.
said, "No." He said, "The selection board committee has told me to tell you that you are never to apply back to Peel Regional Police again."
Wow.
That's what he told me. So I got up and I walked out, and I found my car in the parking lot. And I sat in my car for about 40 minutes. I couldn't move. The tears were just flowing down my face. I was I was hurt. I was in pain because I knew what it was.
Yeah.
The color of my skin was just a little bit too rich for their liking.
Mhm. Mm.
And it took me about 40 minutes to gather myself where I could actually start the car and move off. But during that 40 minutes, I said to myself, I cannot allow those guys to predict or make my future. I can't allow them to do that,
There
right?
you go.
And then it was about, that building that determination. To make a long story short, it took me from that day, it took me 6 years and 13 police departments before I was finally hired by the York Regional Police, right? That's just one of the experiences that I had trying to get on a police service. So let's jump, some 30 years later, 25, 30 years. I'm now the officer in charge of recruiting. I'm
Hmm.
running the show, right?
Yes.
I'm running the show.
You're asking, why are you here?
Okay, I'm the dude that's asking the questions now.
Exactly.
So when I went into recruiting, there was a problem in the organization. They was complaining about, oh, we can't get enough diverse members candidates to put in their application. The classes were about 3 to 5% diversity. I knew there was a problem. I knew that needed to change, and I could change it. I went in there and I figured it out really quickly, and it came to numbers. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of numbers. In York Regional Police, we hired about 35 members at a time, and we had 3 classes per year. Okay, fair enough. And I'll just give you a kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. These are not specific numbers in any way, shape, or form, but they'll demonstrate what I'm talking about. So we're going to hire 35 individuals. Now, we've got a stack of applications in the hundreds. We'll take a stack, let's say even 300 applicants, right? And when we flush them out of the 300, you have 260 male white applicants. You got females, and you got 20 racialized people that are applying for these positions.
You're right.
Huh? Okay. So if you were to work with just the numbers alone, if you were to cut that in half, because you're going to lose a lot of people through the process.
Yeah.
You end up with, let's say, so you've got 260 male whites, and you have 20
females.
20 females and 20 racialized individuals. So you cut that in half, you got 130, and then 10 and 10.
Yeah.
Right? You cut that in half again, you got 65 male whites, you got 5 diverse members and 5 females.
Yeah.
How do you think that class is going to flush out when you're picking 35 people out of there?
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the problem. So what I did was I went through these applications, and the people that self-identified as racialized, I plucked them out of the pile. And then I tried to balance the male whites with the diverse members and female candidates. And what do you think happened?
I'm assuming you got a balanced room.
Oh, man. Yeah. Immediately, the percentages went up.
Yeah.
To the point, I remember I mentioned last time we spoke that in just about a year, so that was the 3rd class, I ended up with 50%. So 15 male whites and 15 female and diverse candidates.
Wow.
That was in a year.
Wow. Just so with the selection process.
Just a selection process.
It's just selecting.
So if you have a candidate pool of 50 male whites and 50 diverse members, we don't need to worry about anything. It flushes out, right?
Yeah.
It will flush out. It's where it's unbalanced is a big problem. So now what you need to do, you need to go out in the community and you need to recruit. You need to recruit racialized folks to put their application in to be part of police service. So that's what we did as well. So not only did we try to balance out when we were selecting the applicants, but we actually went out and got them. We reached out in the community. We were everywhere. Church. We were at the malls. We were at. We went to events. We advertised in ethnic newspapers. We did everything that we needed to do to raise that count level, and so we could balance out the selection. So I say all of this to say this is that when I give you an example of my time getting on the job, it doesn't equate to what's happening now. It's much better because things have been happening. The community has voiced what they need and what they want to see, and most of the police departments are now trying to reflect that. It's a long answer, but I hope
It's informative, right?
yeah.
Because I think that is something that people need to know. Sometimes we get a prefixed or preconception of what and how these systems work, but it just goes to the point we were talking earlier, right? That change in systemic things can really be changed, but you got to be inside, and you
Yeah.
walked in and you automatically shifted the board, to give people of color and of gender a different opportunity. And I think the one thing I love about what you said was you didn't go into some database on
No.
Indeed or whatever. You went into the community, and you recruited. You, and we talk about this in community development all the time, right? Community development is defined as giving neighborhoods equal or greater access to resources as other neighborhoods,
Yeah.
regardless of their economic status, ethnicity, etc. But the reality is, yeah, I lived in those types of communities growing up, and I never saw no companies coming out to recruit from the community. You would see people coming into the community as police officers. You see them coming in different, versions and forms, even things like solid waste management. Who came and
Yeah.
said there was a big job in solid waste? Right? There's almost 44 how many divisions where in a city, there's so many different divisions, but who really hears about them in the communities that they serve, right? They're imported in a way, right? You had guys coming from Barrie and Oshawa and all these places. And what about the people who were just living right there and who knew the community, who knew the
And,
hotspot, who could talk to
and
a kid by name?
and some amazing, amazing talent
Yeah,
there. That you know what? Sometimes it was just an approach. How you doing? Um,
exactly.
so tell me about yourself, right? And
Hmm.
would you be interested in law enforcement?
Yeah,
Okay, boom. You
yeah,
planted the seed, and
yeah,
they'll stew on it, or maybe they've had it within them for a long, long time, whatever the case may be. Next thing you know, they're calling. Okay, I put an application together. I'm ready to go. And
yeah.
some amazing talent,
100%.
phenomenal.
100%. They say there's no monopoly on talent, right?
Oh,
There's no monopoly on it. You can find it if you're looking hard enough,
yes,
and it could be right in front of you, or you might
right.
have to mold the potential to get, the greatness to come out of them. You mentioned something that I wanted to follow up with, and I know I want us to get us a little bit into, before we get into reform, I want to kind of talk about the what's the word I want to use? I want to say the lack of connection to community because these people aren't from the community, right? Like
Yeah,
they would see a bunch, and I can speak to my experience in terms of the community I served, not in law enforcement, but through a different format, and I would see a lot of cops come by and start to harass guys who were just sitting in front of the center, chilling, enjoying each other's company, and they pull up and start questioning everybody, and I think that was the beginning of the era. Now this is in the 90s. I'm still 25. Let's just put that out there really good.
but
Okay, so
all right.
I'm
Yeah,
just recalling from
I hear
stories and memories.
you. I hear
I'm still 25. So, but I remember that era when they were just stopping everyone who was, especially the young black men, who were just being targeted. Like they could just be sitting there and enjoying each other, out of trouble. They just came from the center. They were playing ball, eating and laughing and having fun, and they would be outside. And then all of a sudden you see cars just rolling up one after the other, and the questions and the questions. And I think back then there wasn't even the idea that they were being targeted. They
Right.
were pretty polite. They were just like, yeah, no, we're here, we're chilling, we just came from the center, we're playing ball, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. And just that passive aggressive way they used to come at them. After a
Yes.
while, I used to go out and say, what can we do for you? Because now we're city to city staff, right? Like I'm a city staff, you're a city staff. So no matter which way you turn this, you don't outrank me in any form. We both work for municipal government.
That's right.
And they would look at me like, whoa, where did you come from
That's
in this
good.
building?
That's good.
Right?
That is
Because
good.
I just neutralize them. I'm like,
Put
let's
them on
just because
notice.
you carry a gun, I carry a whistle. Let's go to
Put them
work
on
here.
notice.
Either which
Yeah.
way, we're controlling the environments we serve, right?
Yeah.
So, and we provide. We're city staff. We are to provide service. We are not here to harass the people that are using the service. because without them, there's no us.
Okay. Okay. All
Right?
right.
There's no
Yeah.
us. And so that those years where things started to happen and youth were being targeted, we came to a point where that education was needed. Do you think today that we are still facing the need to educate our youth about carding and the tactics they're using out there to target?
Yeah. Your points are so on point, if I could say that. They're so valid. Yeah. Um, I think we still need to be careful, because what we don't want to do is give our youth um, the idea that um, they are completely victimized. We
Mm,
need them to be strong and to
yeah.
be deliberate in their actions, and don't feel the victimization bubble, because you're not a victim, right, anymore. um,
Mm-hmm.
you are you, and you have the value and worth of everybody, right? So look at it through that lens. But also, there's a little bit of naivety too, because the police do in fact, um, they do target you. They do.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it. And that's something that you know people like myself need to challenge them on and deal with them from a power perspective, right? Because they
Yeah.
look at you as not as just a citizen, whereas they've got to take me for what I am, and others,
Mm-hmm.
and like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is a bit of that going on, where they are targeting young youth.
Mm-hmm.
What I say to the young brothers and sisters out there is, don't give them a reason. If you
Mm-hmm.
give them a reason, they're going to run with it, and they're going to exploit it, and you probably won't come out well on the other end. So
Yeah.
take away that from them. Take
Mm-hmm.
away that. You're better than that, So there's strategies to deal with the police, and I would say simply, you know, just it, there are some things that you need to know in terms of your rights,
Right.
right? And just let me give you just a couple things, and hopefully
Yeah.
this will help. Um, if you are in a vehicle and you're stopped by the police and you're the driver, there's some things that you must do. So you must provide your driver's license, your ownership, and your insurance. You must do that on request, right? If you don't do that, then you're in a world of hurt, because you
Mm-hmm.
will get charged with a number of offenses. Do not lie to them, because if you lie, there's an obstruction there, right? Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a passenger, then you have no obligation to provide that information to the police. You're sitting
Hmm.
side beside the driver, and they say, "Okay, who are you?" You have no obligation to do that, to give them any information.
Wow.
If you're
That's it.
walking on the
Like
street,
even your name, like
no,
so if they say
you do
you don't
not
have
have to
to.
provide that. Now, there's a caveat. There's always a caveat. If
Mm-hmm.
there is a criminal offense being committed in the vehicle, let's say there's drugs in the vehicle,
Right.
and something like that, something
Yeah.
high, then you are now detained, and you need to provide information to the police who you are, right?
Right.
But I'm talking about just an average
Just
traffic
chilling.
stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they say, who are you? You don't need to tell them. If
Mm-hmm.
you're walking on the street and you're approached by the police, and you ask them, "Am I under arrest?" and they say no. "Am I under detention?" they say no. Then you have no obligation to give them any information whatsoever. If you are arrested, you still don't have to give them any information, but you cannot lie to them. You can't tell them
Mm-hmm.
that you're not who you are. You're not who you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot do that. If you're
Mm-hmm.
under detention, so what I mean by that is that the police are investigating an incident. They believe that you are part and parcel of this incident. Um, then they have the right to detain you, right?
Right.
Okay. You don't.
Can I jump in right there? Can I jump in right there? So, okay. So let's say something is happening down the street.
Yes.
They come cruising, they stop you, they start asking questions, or they, I guess, are feeling the right to detain you for whatever reason. Now, what if, like, how would I put this? Like, how do you know? Like, are you allowed to be like what are you allowed to do in that moment? As to
Yes. So if you're under detention, you do
yeah,
not have to provide information to the police.
okay.
You do not have to provide. You're not under any obligation to provide information to the police. If you're
Does
under
that change from municipality to municipality, from
it's
Fort,
the
like
same
from?
right across the province. It's
Oh, really? Okay. We all heard
absolutely.
that here, right across the province. Okay,
Yeah,
so no
yeah,
matter
yeah.
where they are in
Yeah.
Ontario,
In Ontario,
they.
you're not. Yes. Yeah. If you're
Okay,
under
so if you're
detention,
not from Ontario, our listeners, because we know we are
well, I'm
global.
going to go further because it's
Check
criminal
the
code.
laws. Yeah.
I'm talking about the criminal code, which is national, right? It's
There
right
you
across
go.
the country,
There you
right? So,
covered.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's
So,
good to know.
but do not lie. If you lie, there's an obstruction there, right? And when I say detention is reasonable. They can hold you for a reasonable amount of time. That will be determined by the court what is reasonable. But they're not going to. They cannot or should not hold you for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, something like that. Perhaps 10 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on the investigation. Maybe even an hour. I don't know, but it has to be reasonable, and they have to articulate that, right?
Upon being detained, what are the
Yes.
rights in terms of contacting, for like their loved ones, parents? Like what is the process
Yeah.
there?
So they cannot stop you from contacting your lawyer or your parents or that you're not under arrest, so they cannot stop you from doing that. Now, if you're under arrest, they must provide you with information to contact a lawyer if you don't have a lawyer. And when you do speak to a lawyer, they have to it has to be done in private. So they will put you in a room with a phone, and you can speak to your lawyer. And they can, if you don't get the lawyer the first time, they have to give you multiple chances to speak to a lawyer.
Right.
You don't have to say, even if you speak to a lawyer or you do not have to give any information. You do not have to do that.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
That is really helpful. Before we go on, let's just take a plug to all the people. Let's get a pulse check. If you do have questions for, I almost want to say Dr. Keith, the way you're giving the gems today, honey. You're dropping it like a medicine man.
In there.
You wearing the pinstripe and dropping gems, honey. You should have rocked the suit today. I would love to see.
I might still have it.
Let's get in the closet.
Go.
But if you are coming in, welcome to Love Day Afrobeat Music Talk Radio here with Miss J on Community Conversations. I'm here with one of my favorite guests. I have to bring him back. This is Mr. Keith Merith, everybody. I don't even say he's retired. I say he is still pounding the pavement, sharing the gems about law enforcement, the things you need to know. Not only is he here to advocate for those who are trying to get into the field, but he's giving us amazing, knowledgeable pieces to help keep our young ones educated. And maybe not just our young ones. Maybe you have a hothead mom, who's get out there. So we're thank you for joining again. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at infolovebay@gmail.com or post if you're watching live. Post those and the producers will make sure we get those questions. So, Mr. Keith, let's get back into the juice. We know that you wore a pinstripe pimp suit to the interview, right? Yes. And they crossed you 6 years.
6 years.
To get you to the force and to peel. And so can we talk about resilience, everybody? Can we give this man a round of applause for resilience? How many people would have quit after 2 or 3 times?
I couldn't do it.
And 6 years. There's where you're destined to make change when you keep coming back, when they keep saying no. right? And I always say no just means next opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So you kept taking those steps. So we were talking a little bit about some of the issues, the hiring component, the recruitment, how he's made some really great changes just with one action, getting it into our communities and finding that diverse talent. I'd like for us to dig in a little bit now around police reform. I think there's lots in your book that you discuss in terms of some of the changes that are needed in order
Yeah.
to have the community's benefit. And I think I'm going to start with this question: why do we need police? Why do we need, as citizens? Why do we need them?
Yeah, what a great
I mean, not to
question.
be handy with a machete, a possible knife, or kitchen knives. I mean, if sister can hold it down and she needs to now, come on. No, but why law enforcement?
What a great question. You know, we absolutely do need the police. When you get a good police service and good police people, they're worth their weight in gold. You
Mm,
know, situations, police go to 100 different situations every day, from barking dog complaints, um, missing bicycles, stolen bicycles. They go to people um, presenting fraudulent documents in the bank. They go to sudden infant deaths. They go to the hydro wires are down, so they need to control traffic on the road. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And they do just amazing job in what they do. If you
mhm.
think about the amount of calls for service that police services get every day, 24 hours of the day, it's in the hundreds of thousands across the province and across this great nation. So the police are necessary.
Mhm.
And what we're asking for is just good policing. In essence, that's what we're asking
Yeah,
for. So,
that's it.
people want our police departments to be professional, right? That's what we're asking for. People want fear reduction. And you get
Mm,
that with
yep.
police, hopefully with police, engaged in the community, people want to feel
Yeah.
safe and secure, right? You want to reduce your victimization, right? Because bad people are out there. The cops are there to sort of take them out of commission, and give you a better life, a better community
Right.
environment, and so on and so forth.
Safer. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we want our police to be properly equipped. We want
Hmm.
them to be properly trained and performing the tasks as they're supposed to do. We want them fiscally responsible with the money that we give them, to put a police service together and give us some service.
Hmm.
But there's a but.
The but.
There's, and I will tell you about the but. Some of us believe that the police are the problem, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're in a community that you don't feel safe in the community and you see the police as an occupying army and you see them as a
Yeah.
symbol of tyrannical behavior, right? And you're afraid of them and you're afraid for the people that you know, that
Yeah.
cannot be a good scenario, right?
Yeah.
So, your question was, why do we actually even need the police? Well, even the folks that feel that the police are an occupying army, they really want the police to be good. They really
Hmm.
want the services that we're talking about in terms of good policing. And
Yeah.
sometimes they feel they don't get that, right?
Yes.
So what's the alternative, right?
Yeah, well, there's people coming by with the cars, and the community used to coin, it says to serve and protect, and they used to say no, it's to serve and harass, right? And it's unfortunate, but and they kind of were putting it out there, like the only time you're stopping somebody is,
Yeah,
to
harass.
tell to
Yeah,
challenge if they lived here and why are they walking in the streets, and like some of the
yeah.
questions they would ask. I'm like, bro, come on.
Oh
And I said
my,
that to one. They came and all strapped up, and they like to hold a vest, right? So they came in and strapped up with their elbow. I said, put your elbows down. And he looks at me, he's like, what? I said, do you realize that you come in, this is a very threatening thing. Like you coming in like you trying to do something.
You're
Right?
trying
And
to do
so,
something.
yeah, like you coming in like, you know what I mean? So, so he looked at me and he goes, and he looked at his partner, and his partner went, you know, she's right. So they put their hands down. And it
You're
was
not.
just a whole different energy, right?
Well, that's it. Well, that's it, isn't it? Right? When they come with this intimidating bullshit, come on, you don't need that, man.
I always want to know. Tell me this: in the army, I mean, in the force, do they tell them not to smile? Like when you
No,
walk into a non-threatening, safe
no,
environment, like do they tell them like you always have to look like you're about to throw down?
yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah,
problem.
like and I think that's the biggest problem, right? Because you're like, I mean, I work in community centers, and you walk in and kids are running and laughing and parents and you come in and your
Yeah,
face is all turned. Like
it's not-
it's like you're creating that fear that you talked
they
about. And
don't
they're
even
supposed to be there for fear
understand what they're
reduction.
doing, or maybe they do. I don't know because it's
Yeah.
unnecessary and it's
Yeah.
self-defeating. To be honest with you, I mean,
Yes.
it's
Agreed.
nonsensical, right? And
Agreed.
it's folks like you and it's folks like me that tell them that it's that you see that nonsense. No,
Yeah, let
yeah,
it go.
don't bring that here, right?
Let it go. Let it
Don't
go.
bring.
And as I said, there's been a lot of progression to your point. You know, I dealt with a lot of the city of Toronto. That's where I work in. You know, and I have to say that the last few years before I was able to retire at 25, you know, I had the opportunity. I didn't retire at 25, and I'm still 25, but working with the officers, with the community relation officers and things of that nature. I want to delve into that after you finish a little bit more about what you were saying, but I do want to delve into how do the community relationship officers come into play. So finish your last thought, and then I want to kind of I'd love to hear
Yeah.
how that came about.
All right. So, I went on a bit of a rant, but in essence, you asked me about police reform. What do we need to do?
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
just give you a couple of quick thoughts, and if we want to explore them more, we can, or we do it another time. Not a big deal.
Round 3, let's go.
Round 3.
But you have to wear the pimp suit.
Hey, pull that back.
Honey, we coming through.
I'm gonna dust it off.
He said dust it off. Not the dust. You know how many like with mothballs in a nice little, the way they used to hold the suits with the mothballs.
I paid a whole lot of money. I paid a whole lot of money for that suit. Okay.
He's wearing it. He's wearing it.
I'm gonna put it on. So a couple of quick things. Okay, so I'm going to start with police reform. I'm going to talk about recruiting real quick.
All
right?
Let's do it.
So we all know that we need to hire diversity within the police service. We need to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So said, so done. All right.
All right.
We need to increase the diversity within the ranks of police services. There's ways to do this. We can talk about that again.
Mm-hmm.
The point that I'm going to make here right now is every single recruit that we bring into the organization is the future of that police organization. And every piece of training that they receive should be accountability based, right? Mm-hmm. They should have from day one a duty of care. And the duty of care means that they not only look after themselves, but they look after everybody else. If there's a situation that they're involved in and the other officers are going sideways, they have a duty of care to intervene and stop that bad behavior. If they don't, they are just as complicit. That needs to be built into the training from day one, from the day they walk into the service. That needs to be built in. Accountability.
Agreed.
You need to have a rigorous process for choosing your coach officers. The recruits, as I mentioned before, are sponges. Right. Whoever you put them with, they're going to influence that officer going through the rest of their career. So it's incumbent on the organization to put the best officers with these new recruits. If you want a good product, put them with the best officers.
Quality assurance.
Cool. Oh, Beautiful. That's it. That's exactly what that is. Right? Um, you have to change the culture within the police department, as again I mentioned last time, from arrest to problem solving. So
Yeah.
what's happening right now, and I've challenged this before, is that your performance is attached to how many arrests you make on the street. So if that's the case, what do you
Yeah.
think? The officers are going to default to making arrests and
1000%.
problem solving, right? So let's change that. Let's give
Yeah.
credit for officers that do not arrest when there's other options, and give them credit for that, so they're not locked into making these arrests
Yes.
to
It's like
boost.
creating that balance, right? That yes, you need to arrest people who are doing things that are illegal, but then you should also be rewarded for resolving. Because I mean, things like little fights that are happening in the neighborhood and stuff, you're gonna come in strong, like you bringing in
Okay.
spot, you bringing in all your cars,
Oh yeah.
just to arrest two guys fighting. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
That, it's not that deep. It's like they were just arguing. They just had a bad call in the game, and now they're just taking the argument out here. It's nothing of major,
Yeah.
and that's just something to just split them up and say, hey, let's communicate here, right? Or like take it to your corners. Yeah, you're right, 100%.
What's
Yeah.
the consequences for a situation that you just mentioned, where the officers go in and arrest them? What are the consequences? How does this flow? Right?
Huge ripple effect. Huge
Huge,
ripple effect.
massive.
Yeah,
You
huge
know,
ripple effect.
and it could be resolved. Listen, let's figure this thing out.
Yes.
Done. You know.
100%. You know, at one point we used to walk our young men home, like the kids in the, just to make sure they got home without someone holding them up and asking. And because they were, and because they weren't educated, because who is, like, there's no, you know what I mean? No one comes out and just starts talking about what you should and shouldn't say. That came a little bit later in the game when
Right.
people
Right.
harassment started getting a little bit too severe.
Right.
But it got to a point where we were like, we just group walk one house to the next, dropping kids off just to make sure they got safe, and then they could come back to the center the next day. We would talk to the parents and say, listen, beg you, come pick up your pitney, please. Please, and like, just come get them at the end of at the program, right? Because we're telling them, like, you know what I mean? You want to think your neighborhood was safe, and it is safe by all intensive. I remember walking those streets at midnight, and I never had to worry about getting home from work or leaving a late shift or whatever, you know. And I mean, they never harassed women. Like, we were never, you know, they'd cruise past us, but let there be a, you know, and with my neighborhood, we were primarily of West Indies or Jamaican or, you know, whatever the case may be. So you're right. I mean, the effect that it causes is, the sad part is, it became to a point where moms were coming out their house cussing, like, and it's like, Mom, you can't do that, because now you're not only inciting them to come after you and start talking their nonsense, but your children are watching, and then they're emulating when you're not around, and that is where that ripple effect becomes even worse.
Yes. Yeah, you've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it. 100%. You know. You're bang on. You're bang on.
Well, thank you so much. I too feel like I should have been in the law enforcement.
Yeah. I'll give you one. I have 21 recommendations in my book, and they get a little bit deep, so I won't even bother you with that. But one of the things that I would like to see is that before any of the officers are promoted to a supervisor's position, i.e. a sergeant or a staff sergeant, I think they should serve at least 1 year in community services.
I agree.
I think they should do that.
1000% agree, because there's some fabulous police people out there, right?
Yes.
That we had at one of our centers, we actually opened it at lunchtime for them in the gym, and they would come and shoot around and play. We played 21 and we cook, and we did it particularly because I wanted to see. I said to my staff, if they see you interacting and they see that relationship, and the kids trust us, so if we look like we trust the police, they'll trust the police. And all of the violence that was happening in that area went down because the police got a chance to understand the kids, right? And it got to the point where they were taking them on trips to go and visit the station. They took them out on the speedboat, and went across to the island, and they showed them how they police in that area. It was so cool. Like,
fabulous. Isn't that fabulous? Right? Isn't that fabulous?
Well, and there were a lot of kids that summer who joined. I don't know if you had it in Peel, but in Toronto they had like a youth job program in the summer.
Job programs, yes.
Yes, and a lot of the youth from that neighborhood joined. Kids we would have thought would have never been interested in law enforcement.
There you go.
Came with their little shirts, and we were like, "What? Like, oh boy, yeah, right." So
yes.
it's very true what you're saying. I think all 21 are important, and I would love to sit down and discuss all 21 of them. But to your point, it's the little changes.
Yes, it is.
Things. Yeah, it doesn't have to be magnanimous. It just has to be little changes.
They sit around every time. Oh, we're going to study this. We're going to do this and that. It's right there in front of you, and there's simple things.
Yes.
Can make a huge change.
Yes.
Yes. It's right there.
Some of those questions should be asked. Not only like, yes, we should serve in the community services, but sometimes even from the hiring, even just for the recruitment, the questions you ask should be things like, what's your skill in resolving conflict? Right? And I'm sure maybe there is, but I've never been through a police, but I think these are some of the things that, people, I find in many jobs with human services, they don't ask the right questions. I mean, I could sit here and tackle that all day, but it speaks to what you're talking about with culture, right? Yes. That the questions you're asking them, they're answering, and then they come, and then there's a guy who's on the force bitter, his wife left him, or whatever the case is, and he just takes it out on everybody in the community. And he's teaching these new officers, when you see them, you get out there and blah, 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 and they're going off. And then these poor people walk into the community and they try it. And they don't realize that there's some people in the community who don't care that you have a gun on your waist.
Right on. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't care. You will get, I watched this one. I felt so sorry for her. I had to go and rescue her. She came in the center and she's a Caribbean woman, and she turned around and she started talking all type of Trinidadian. And the poor lady didn't understand what she was saying much. She was turning red. I felt so sorry for her. I walked up and I said to the mom, I'm like, chill, just give me a second. Let me do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. She can't talk to me. I said, that's how Trinis talk. The problem is you can't understand what she's saying. And all she's saying is you have no right to come up in here and talk to her without addressing as to why, or talk to her son as to why you're, and she's standing right there. Yes. Right? I said, you have to understand culture. Culture indicates that we respect our elders. If they're present, we respect them. You don't bypass us to go and talk to us to meet them. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I just talked to her quietly, and I let her into the office and, brought her down, gave her some water. And then I said, would you like to now speak to the parent of the child? All right. So she spoke to the parent heard the situation and then bust the child behind because he was in the wrong. And so she looked and she said, oh my goodness. I said, you see, we handle our own if it's warranted.
Yes, we do.
It's warranted. Right? But you have to have that respect. And she came back years later and she said, and she became a sergeant, I think. And she came back and she brought some officers and she said, I want you to meet a woman who's going to teach you
what
understand.
A lesson. Yes.
Yeah. What I had to learn the hard way,
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Beautiful woman. And she was there for the right reason. She came to serve and protect, Yeah. But I think people just need to understand, what that looks like, what that looks like. So
absolutely.
Wow. We look at this. We're already almost at the end of the show. Oh my God, this is amazing.
Okay.
Where should we end off? What other gems does Mr. Merith want to leave us before we start to wrap up?
You know what? I want to talk real quickly about some words of wisdom for our people. Right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it real quick. And I'm not going to take up too much time. I hope I get the
It's
message.
your time. You got a whole 5 minutes to
I got
drop
5 minutes. All right. All right. So what I would say to us and to our young people is that you need to have a vision for yourself, right? And you got to see yourself in the future. You got to see yourself in that vision. Where do you fit in? What do you want? What do you really want to do? You know, what are you good at? What are your strengths? And when you find that vision, I want you to envision it every day, every working minute, every hour. Find that vision. Find what it is. If you're going to seek meaningful employment for a long, long time, here's what I'm going to tell you. You need to build into this employment. You need to have a job that gives you a little bit of autonomy. I'll explain that in a minute. It has to have some complexity to it. And also, there's a connection between your efforts and your rewards. So the example, and it's not my example, but it's from Malcolm Gladwell, the author. And he talks about the autonomy, complexity, and the connection between effort and reward. And the example he gives is that you're working for, let's say, $80,000 at a toll booth, and it's day in, day out, day in, day out. Or you're making $75,000 as a architect, where you have a little bit of room for your autonomy, you have complexity in the type of job, and you build things, and there's a reward built into it. If you get the understanding of what I'm trying to say to you, make sure that your job that you're looking for has a little bit of those things in it. It will serve you better. Have a plan, right? If you fail to plan, then plan on failing. Oh yeah, you're going to fail, right? So look at what it is that you want to do and build a plan. How am I going to get there, right? Do I need a little bit more education? Do I need some volunteer hours here? What is it that I need to do to assure myself that I can get to where I want to be? So have a plan. Make sure your plan is a little bit flexible as well, right? I give the analogy of the tunnel. We all know the train in the tunnel, and you have to think, right? It could be the light at the end of the tunnel, or it could be a badass train coming right towards you. What you going to do? Think of it ahead of time, right? Think of it not when the train's coming at you, ahead of time. How am I going to get out of the way? So a little bit of flexibility. You need to execute, right? So you got your vision and you got your plan, but you don't do anything with it. Nobody's giving you a silver spoon. You're not born with a silver spoon. Most of us aren't, right? You need to go and get it, right? You need to put your plan into place, and you need to make sure you go and get it. Okay? All right. So I'm preaching now. I'm getting into it.
The word, hallelujah. Come on now. Talk to me.
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Reverend Merith now.
So, the pain of failure is never as great as the pain of regret. Right? Right? You can fail a dozen times, but if you didn't even put the effort into it, man, that's a different level of pain, right? So take care of your business.
That is called regret, because you could have went. I always say you never fail unless you quit, right? Because you could fail forward many times, right? But you only fail if you quit.
If
right?
you quit.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the richest people on earth. They will tell you how much times they just kept going through the lessons learned, through the lessons lost. And, now they're millionaires and billionaires, and they tell the same message to everybody. And you said it. If you're not born with a silver spoon, most people are born with a plastic spoon in their mouth, right? Yes. Like, understand, level up your spoon, right? Trade it in for the silver.
You're killing me, man.
Level up the spoon, honey, get it in. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you can really get. We could go here all night. We could go here all night. Party people, I want you're going to stay on with me as we close this show, because you're that amazing. I want them to see the last of your face and take these gems. Ladies and gentlemen, globally, wherever you are, all the countries that have been tuning into Community Conversation, we want to say thank you from Keith and I on behalf of Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio for providing the platform to have these kind of conversations. Hit the replay, get your kids in front of it, let them hear what's going on, let them see, let them access knowledge. We always talk about we never get enough. Well, on this show, we're bringing it to you each and every Sunday right here, 5 o'clock p.m. on Community Conversations. So where's my Mr. Keith? Mr. Keith, we're going to be signing off.
All right.
We're going to keep this conversation going. There might be a Darker Shades part 3 in the making.
Oh yeah, okay.
And listen, I tell people we can't make change unless the communication keeps happening. So from Keith and I, we want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being part of our world for the last hour. And we wish you the best. And always remember, keep the conversation going. We'll talk to you soon. See you next Sunday. So all nothing but love. And don't forget December 7th at Snell Grove Community Center. There will be the 3rd annual Children's Gift Giving event. If you would love to sign up your child for the event and you live in the Brampton area or further, wherever you're coming from, please feel free. You're going to hit us up at lovedayevents@gmail.com. All right. So ladies and gents, we wish you the best and keep the conversation going. I'm Miss J, your host of Community Conversations right here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Have a good one.